So for today, we're going to start our lesson with a little mystery picture. And I want you to look at these two images, and I want you to tell me what you see. What looks the same? What looks different? What do you notice about these pictures? Yes, they're both traveling. All right, that's the same. Okay, and one's different. There's a horse. Right. Okay. So if you were to look at these two pictures and I was to ask you which one you think came from long ago, do you think the car is from long ago or the horse and buggy? Right. Yeah, the horse and buggy. Because today, how do people travel? They use the car. Yes. So in our area, we do have some Amish, and they still travel by horse and wagon. It doesn't look quite like this. It's normally like a much smaller little black wagon. But a long time ago, people traveled with wagons and horses. And today, most people travel by cars, trucks, SUVs. And that's, quite a bit different today than it was long ago. So what we're going to learn today is we're going to learn what life is like long ago. But before we can really go any further, we have to know what long ago means. So we call the time before today the past. The past can be yesterday, last month, last year. That's the past. In the past, you learned how to walk. You maybe learned how to ride a bike. That's the past. The past can mean yesterday, last year. Sometimes it means long ago. And if we're talking about a long time ago, as in time that's far back in the past, it was before any of us were born. Maybe even before my parents were born or before your grandparents were born. Long ago is a long time ago. Okay? So way, way in the past. People looked different in the past or long ago. They had different things than what we have today. So back then, this is how they would listen to music. Today, we play music on our phones. We have our little earbuds. And we call today, sometimes you'll hear it called the present. So the present is where we are right now. This is the present or today. So we're going to think about and talk about how people lived in the past or long ago. Do these people look like people you would see today? No, their clothes are different. They would have done different things. And then we're going to think about what the people are like that live right now, today, in the present. So at the end of today's lesson, you're going to be able to talk about how life was different long ago from today, and you're going to be able to look at pictures and sort them into long ago or today based on what you see in the pictures. You're going to even be able to tell me why they belong to those groups. So in order to do that, we have to learn a little bit more about long ago. To help us learn about long ago, we're going to read a book. I love this book. I just found it about a year ago, and it's called When I Was Built, written and illustrated by Jennifer Therms. And it says, for Jeremy and Emily and all future children who live in this home, an old house is a wise teacher. I am an old house. I live next to the side of the road where a farmer named Fairchild built me a long time ago. He built me small and strong, and through the years I've had many children grow up within my walls. Today, I still stand proud with a great family living inside. I watch the world pass by and sometimes think about the way things were when I was first built. So listening to that first page, who is telling this story? I was built small and strong. You're right. It's the house. The house says, my walls. And even today, the Gray family live inside. So this story is going to be told by the house. Today, big houses surround me, up and down my street. When I was built, the Fairchilds were the only people around for miles and miles. Today, I hear the rumble of big machines and power tools that make it easier for people to build large houses. When I was built, Farmer Fairchild gathered large stones from my foundation with his horse and plow from the rocky fields behind me. He cut wood for my beams with an axe in a nearby grove of trees. Friends came to help raise my walls and then to celebrate. So back then, they had to use an axe to cut down a tree, and then they would use a sawmill to make the lumber, and then they would have friends come and help build the house. Long ago, it took a long time to build a house. Now we have power tools and air guns and air compressors. We go to the store to buy our lumber. It was different long ago. Today, I jump when the big steel furnace in my basement turns on with a boom. The blowing hot air keeps Elizabeth and Peter Gray warm, even in February. When I was built, my rooms were made small and my ceilings low to hold in the heat from the fireplace, which warmed the Fairchilds through the long winter. Today, I have a bathroom built under the slope of my roof. Hot and cold water run through my copper pipes and fill the bathtub and toilet. When I was built, I watched Maggie and Anna Fairchild walk across the backfield to my outhouse to use the bathroom. They carried buckets of well water to heat over my hearth at wash time, even in the middle of winter. In those days, people didn't usually take a bath but more than once or twice a month. Could you imagine only having one bath every month? I take a bath almost every day. And have any of you been to like a county fair or like the rodeo last weekend where they didn't have bathrooms and you had to use the little blue porta potties? That's kind of what they had back then. Long ago, they didn't have bathrooms in the houses. You had to go to an outhouse. You said you had to walk outside to the outhouse. And those were in a separate building away from the house, and it was just a big hole in the ground with like a toilet seat above it. So long ago, if you woke up in the middle of the night and you had to go pee, you had to walk all the way outside. Kind of crazy. Today, the Grays sometimes eat at pizza parlors and fast food restaurants. They shop at the grocery store in town, which sells food from all around the world. Cooking a meal is quick and easy with the help of the electric stove and the microwave oven in the new kitchen. When I was built, the Fairchilds ate vegetables grown in their garden and meat from animals raised on a farm. I smelled stew cooking in the iron pots over my hearth and crusty bread baking in my beehive oven. So you look at this picture here, and there was stew cooking over the hearth. What do you think a hearth is? Can you see the picture here? This was back then when the Fairchilds would cook their stew in pots on a hearth. Yes, it looks like a fireplace. So the hearth is this area here, but it's much bigger than a fireplace. Sometimes this area is actually big enough for you to almost walk in. So you can hang big pots of stew. They would also use the fire to do things with their clothing and animal hides. So they had a giant fireplace, and it was called a hearth. Today, there are electric lamps and a television set that lights up the night with noise and chatter. When I was built, I listened to the Fairchilds. I listened as the Fairchilds passed quiet evenings together, talking or reading or telling stories, their faces aglow in the flickering candles. So back then, they didn't have electricity. You didn't turn on the light at the end of the couch. You didn't turn on the light in your kitchen. They would have candles that they would use to light their homes. Today, I hear telephones The Gray's computers and smartphones beep with urgent information from minute to minute. When I was built, the Fairchild sent their news in letters delivered by a man on horseback. It could take weeks for a message to me, a message to reach friends. Could you imagine if you weren't able just to send your friend next door a quick message and say, hey, you want to meet down the creek and play? Of course, they wouldn't do that back then because they'd have to send it by a horse, a rider on a horse. But if they had like a grandma who lived in a different town or a different city and she wanted to send them a birthday card, she would have to mail it weeks and weeks ahead of time so it could get there. She couldn't just send them a text message on their birthday and say, happy birthday. Today, I see cars and trucks race past my front door on the slick black pavement. When I was built, the roads were just rutted dirt paths. I followed the slow clip-clop rhythm of the passing horse and wagon and the quiet footsteps of the walking neighbor. Today, I built airplanes roar over my roof and rattle my old window panes. They leave behind chalky patterns that crisscross the sky as their passengers travel all over the world in hours. When I was built, the world was my front yard. The people stayed close to home. I listened to the soft chattering of crickets and to Maggie and Andrew Fairchild laughing when they chased birds and dragonflies nesting around my walls. So how many of you went on summer vacation? Did you go to the beach? Did you go visit family that lived far away? Long ago, they didn't make those long journeys. They stayed close to home. But now with airplanes and cars, we have the ability to travel far, far away, even in a matter of hours. So that's how one way that life now and life long ago is different. When I was built, I built the footsteps of Maggie and Andrew Fairchild thumping up and down my steep staircase, chasing each other through my rooms. They rested beside my warm fireplace, and I listened to their whispered dreams when they went to sleep in the evening. I saw them gaze out of my window and wonder about what changes the future would bring. And today, Elizabeth and Peter Gray do the same. So thinking about the story that we read, I want you to think about something that was different long ago than it is today. For instance, how did we light houses long ago? Did they have lights they flipped on in the kitchen? No, you're right. They had candles. They would use candlelight, and a lot of times their day would end when it got dark outside. How did the children's lives in the story change over time? Yeah, they didn't go far from home. They stayed close to home long ago. And today we're able to go on vacations and go visit family, right? That's different for sure. If you lived long ago, which parts of life do you think would be hardest for you or the most different? I know for my kids, not having a phone or a tablet or something to watch their YouTube videos on, they wouldn't know what to do. That would definitely be hard for them. And what are two things that were different long ago and today? So long ago and today, we had lots of differences in our book, didn't we? We had the way they heated their homes. We had a fireplace with a hearth. Or today, we have furnace and our air conditioners, all right? I would die without my air conditioning. All right, and long ago, you're right. Long ago, they, like we saw in our first pictures there, they had the wagon and horses, and now we have cars, airplanes, motorcycles, four-wheelers. We have lots of different options for transportation. That is definitely something that's different today than long ago. Good job. All right, friends. So today and long ago. We're going to work with our partners at our tables to do a sort activity. So I'm going to show you what you have. When you get back to your seats, you're going to have 2 sort mats. You're going to have a mat that says, right, it says long ago. And you're going to have another sort mat that says today, all right? And if you notice, on each mat, you have a square here at the top, and then you have a 12 grid there. You're also going to have a stack of pictures. They're going to be in your bag, like this. And with your partner, this is that working on sorting pictures and recognizing things from long ago and today. I want you to discuss the pictures and why you think it belongs either today or long ago. So for our first example, we have the pictures that we started off with. We had our car and we had our horse-drawn wagon, which we know the car is today, right? That was our example this morning, or at the beginning of our lesson. So we're going to put that one right here. That's going to be a give me. And then our wagon goes on long ago. Now, because some of these pictures did print a little small, I wanted to make sure that everybody could see the images really well. So I also made a couple of sets of our large cards here. So if you've got one that you can't really see the details on, like this one, yes, that's a candle. And this one, it's a kitchen with a stove. I will have these up here if you've got one that you can't see, because these cards are pretty small. So we'll have our big images here if we need to come up and get a closer look and maybe determine what a picture is, okay? Perfect. So I want you guys to stand up quietly. You're going to transition back to your tables, and you're going to work with your elbow partner on our sort activity, okay? And as they were completing this sort activity, I was watching over their shoulder and facilitating some conversation. For instance, there is a picture of a young lady with a hula hoop. And we discussed how this was something from long ago because it was a very basic primitive toy. The young lady was just out playing in the yard, and that would have been an example of long ago. Versus the modern day playground, which is life today. We also discussed, we actually had a picture of an outhouse. We went over the fact they had the cute little moon design there. So that was the option for long ago. And then we have the nice new modern bathroom with the lighted mirror and the toilet and the vanity, which was today. So they had great conversation. We discussed some vocabulary, past, present, long ago, today, primitive. We even discussed that a little bit with the outhouse. And then at this point was when I told them that in order to do a very quick check, because we had lots of friends and lots of mats, and I wasn't going to be able to check every single card individually, I asked them to flip all of their cards over on their mat, and they would notice that if they had the cards from today, they would have a blue dot on the top corner. if they had cards for long ago, it should have a red dot on the top corner. So we discussed if there were any cards that were incorrectly identified, and then we discussed that, for instance, this picture of a dirt road with a very basic barbed wire fence, it was sorted as today, which there are a few roads that look like this in our area because we do have a rural, we are kind of in a rural area. However, this is not the typical road for today. This is a typical road for long ago. We even talked about that in our book. So the dirt road actually belonged with long ago, and then we had the alternative, which is the paved road, which is obviously today. They didn't have the machinery or the means to make paved roads long ago, so therefore that is today. So once we checked all of the assessments, we discussed the accuracy, then we went over a few vocabulary terms. We discussed what does it mean, what does long ago mean? And we clarified that long ago is not just yesterday, last year, last month, but long ago is a very long time ago, years and years ago, perhaps before I was born or maybe even before their parents were born. And then I asked them to name something that people used long ago that we don't use much today. So they discussed an axe was used long ago, whereas today people have log splitters, they have chainsaws, they have other means to be more productive and efficient with their work. And then I asked, why is it important to learn how life used to be? And this conversation took a little more coaching. Learning about how life used to be, they did finally get there. They said that way we can learn about different ways to do things. We talked about how it used to be versus now. It allows us to see the evolution of things, the improvements, the technology, the gains that we've made to make life there again more efficient, more innovative, safer, and how we can learn from the past. You know, we've come this far now. What can we do now going forward to make things even more efficient, or to discover new things, or to use these tools? Like electricity was invented a very long time ago, and once that was invented, then there were all kinds of things that came from that. Not only the lights, but like the ability to have a power washer and dryer, a dishwasher where you don't have to do your dishes. Then we got to computers, which allowed apps and games and YouTube. And so it was just kind of seeing where one small invention leads to all the other things that just changes the way life is today compared to long ago. And then we made the life connection and the challenge of going home and discussing with a grandparent or a parent what life was like long ago. They may have had a phone that had a cord on it. They may have a TV without a remote, or they may not have even had a TV when they were growing up. So just to learn, be a little history detective, and see what life was like long ago for their family members. And then finally, we wrapped it up with the fact that today's lesson was about the past and learning what the past means as far as a time frame. And that instead of looking at things like wagons and houses and things that we talked about today, tomorrow we're going to learn about what people did, their jobs, their chores, and what kids used to do every day. So we're going to be, and the kids are going to be surprised at how much life has changed.